And all right, everybody. Hello there. Whoa. Hello there. And welcome to this episode of Get Real with ECAR. And today we're going to talk about inspections. And we are featuring Bill Rourke with Tiger Home and Building Inspections. Hey, Bill, how are you today?
I'm well, Susie. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So inspections, all thing inspections. What is the first thing you want to talk about? I'm assuming it's going to be COVID. Anything new and exciting and different other than what we already know? Or just tell me what you guys are doing for your protocols on COVID.
Fantastic. Thanks, Susie. I'm here with Sue Fasciani today to help me out, and she may jump in here and there. But with reference to our COVID protocols, we are following the Connecticut Realtor protocols, trying to limit our contact wherever possible that makes sense. Obviously, we're not preventing people from attending the inspection. We are asking wherever possible to limit the number of attendees at one time, just to respect individuals' homes. And certainly we do have the protocol in place for mask wearing as is required by CTR. The disinfection program for our staff, we are fully equipped with wipes, disinfectant sprays, anything that they would need, rubber gloves, as I said, masks and shoe covers.
Has that made the inspection process longer? Does it take longer to do an inspection, and does it cost you guys more money to have all those protocols in place, or not really a big deal there?
So, obviously everything costs something, but how do you put a value on safety of our staff and clients and associate realtors? So yes, we have taken some additional cost on, but in the great scheme of things, it's not a huge number as far as that goes.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have done, in addition to our inspector staff, with respect to our environmental group, because our radon monitors are sitting in these houses for 2, 3, sometimes 4 days at a time, we are making sure that we are disinfecting that equipment when it leaves people's houses too, which wasn't something we thought a lot about early on, but we have put in a protocol in place in the last several weeks for that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Did you guys didn't raise your prices due to any COVID stuff, did you?
No,
okay.
no,
All right.
no.
All right.
We're happy to, though.
What else do I want to ask you about? Let me see. You guys, as an inspection company, is this true for all inspections? First of all, do you guys need to carry insurance? Should a realtor be looking for inspection? Can they ask for your insurance coverage? I mean, what's the deal on that subject?
Sure. So there is no requirement in the state of Connecticut to carry any type of insurance for a home inspection company. I think a responsible company obviously would protect themselves and indemnify any other business professionals in that conversation as well. But yeah, not required. We do carry errors and omissions insurance, just as realtors do. Full workers' compensation insurance, because our inspectors are employees of our company, and general liability should something untoward happen on site. So we are fully covered as far as that goes.
This is interesting because the homeowner, when you sign a listing agreement, the homeowner agrees that if should anything happen, they would file a claim. If I'm not mistaken, any one of you realtors can jump in. But so how does that work? If something happened, I don't know, a gigantic problem happened.
Sure. Sure.
Would you guys be going to the homeowner first for them to file a claim, or do you just automatically file one yourself? How does that work? Or does it depend?
So my sense is that if it were to happen, and I've been here 23 years and I'm not aware of this happening, essentially the homeowner would contact us and we would file a claim to our insurance. The reality is, based upon what the deductible would be, Susie, we may just go out of pocket on something like that. Because I mean, really, what's going to happen? I mean,
yeah.
Small things do happen. You could, inadvertently knock over a vase or something like that. But I mean, we haven't really ever had any major claims. And like I said, workers' comp is important to protect our staff. and having a general liability helps. And our insurance, by the way, does indemnify the realtor as well. So you're protected by our insurance, which is not common. But Joe has just been of the opinion all these years that better to be proactive and protect ourselves and everyone in the conversation.
Now, what do you do if an inspector is like repeatedly kind of clumsy? I don't know what clumsy is. Leaving things unlocked, knocking over the vase, not taking care of the sets properly, stuff like that. What do you do? Do you like, you're done? Do you have protocols within your business on how they have to behave?
Fortunately, we haven't had any real issues with that. We do have some common sense training protocols in place. One of them is a job site safety training session that we do for all of our new inspectors, whether they're licensed or not licensed, coming to us. And essentially that is more along the lines of ladder safety and electrical safety, but also just general conduct. We consider ourselves guests in people's houses and we conduct ourselves as such. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of clumsy people in our midst. Our average inspector has been with us over 10 years, and I would guess that they probably wouldn't be with us if that were the case.
Well, how do you find recruits? How do you build your business with the inspectors? What are the features of a good inspector? Like, who is the person that says, I'm going to do inspections? Like, who do you typically hire?
So we're actually pretty proactive in that. We generally look to hire a couple of people a year just to cover attrition. As you can tell by looking at me, I represent our average inspector. We're not young people necessarily. So, in a 5 to 10 year period, you're probably looking at, 3 or 4 inspectors just aging out of the position. So we have to cover that. So we're pretty proactive. I'm actually the contact for our company. I regularly have conversations with prospects. And to be honest with you, those are pretty long conversations. And what I mean by that is they could play out over several months because most of the people that come to the inspection industry probably had a career somewhere else for some period of time. And that gives them, one of the skill sets that we're looking for, which is a technical background. And that's only one of the skill sets that we're looking for.
What type of career?
So it could be anything, right? We can teach anybody anything that we need to, but certainly that individual that comes to us with a technical background is helpful for, one leg of that stool, if you will. Someone that comes from an academic background or a business background that has some management experience, that's another way for us to look at it. And then generally we look for people that are nice. I mean, that sounds contrived, but it's
personable
service business. Yeah. I mean, you have to be able to get along with people and figure out how to, get through your day. So those are really the 3 primary characteristics that we're looking for when we talk to people.
When you say technical, you're talking about carpentry, masonry, stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Something in the trades is helpful because they've been around that. They may not be an expert in heating systems, for example, but if they've been out on job sites for 15, 20 years, some of that just kind of rubs off. So they do pick up a lot of those conversations, which is important.
Is there a license required to be an inspector?
So there's a 2-stage license requirement. Essentially, everybody that in the state of Connecticut that is a licensed home inspector has to be an intern first. So essentially, the state has a program where you have to do a 40-hour class. All of them obviously are online at this point in time. And you have to pass that class, and then that makes you eligible to become an intern. In order to get the permit to be an intern, you have to get somebody to sponsor you. So a licensed home inspector has to sponsor you and is responsible for your training for the first 100 inspections. So they have to do 90 inspections directly supervised and 10 inspections indirectly supervised.
Well, that's kind of bad.
It's a progression. So that's why I say it takes several months for this to play out from that first conversation until somebody is actually onboarded with us and eligible to sit for a licensing exam, which would come after their 100 inspections. They have to sit down and take a state license, which is 120 questions. They have 2 hours to do it. It's not a simple process, nor should it be. Now, we take this very seriously.
I agree. And I just want to point out, I should have done this at the beginning. You actually were my home inspector. What was it, about 11 years ago?
It was a while ago. I
Wanda. So
It
we
doesn't
go
seem like
back.
we could be that old, does it?
I know, right? Okay, what should realtors know about environmental testing requirements?
So as you and all your listeners know, you have a duty to offer certain things to potential buyers with respect to environmental testing. And so I think the conversation needs to be, are those tests going to be done as part of the home inspection by the home inspection company, or are they going to be done independent of that? So that's a choice that the client has to make. Most companies will do pretty much the basic stuff. So they're going to do water testing and radon testing. Obviously, as a water tester, we're an agent for the lab. So our training really harkens back to the lab as far as that goes. And then for the radon, ideally, they would be certified. There are national certifications through National Radon Proficiency Program and the National Radon Safety Board are the two major ones there. And so like any other certification, there's a testing element to that and an ongoing continuing education part to it. And, you know, Susie, today, when we're using electronic monitors, this is pretty sophisticated equipment. I mean, these are essentially computers, and we need to interpret those results. You know, the days of the charcoal bag are pretty much gone. I know there's some that are still out there, but, you know, having the ability to look at that and have some diagnostic capabilities for that radon test is important. We're looking at things like temperature changes, barometric pressure changes, potential tampering, and a couple of other parameters that are on there, which are important things to be able to look at. And then also you need to be able to know how to read that monitor in terms of what is happening inside of that building that can be affecting the radon levels.
Okay, you just went over my head a little bit, but thank you for that.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. All right, I have one more question, then we'll turn it over to any of the people on the call that would like to have questions if they have any. But kind of a on the ground question. What is the sort of the happy spot in an inspection when you're out there? I know I get this once in a while. Like you guys have to point out things wrong with the house because you're working for the buyer. But you could make or break a sale. And in some cases, I've heard that this is problematic, and some of the reasons why inspection services are not used, because you're like so good at what you do. The buyer runs off going, hell no to this house. So what is that happy spot where you're doing your job really well, but you're not turning off a buyer?
Yeah. So Susie, to be honest with you, that conversation starts long before we become involved. And one of the things that we talk about in our classes that we do for realtors, particularly new realtors, is how they are preparing that client for the home inspection. And so when you're walking through a house as a realtor with a client, particularly a new home buyer, it's important to be able to recognize the things that are happening in the building and be able to point out those benefits of it and some of the potential pitfalls there as well, so that when the client shows up to the home inspection, they're not totally overwhelmed. This can be an overwhelming process. There's no question about it. And depending upon the condition of the home, you know, it will really dictate how the client walks away feeling. So one of the best things I think that you can do is make sure as a realtor that you're educated in terms of what is the home inspector going to be talking about in this house, number one. And the other thing is to encourage the client to make a list. That's the most important thing in my mind, because I will tell you, as an inspector, and I would think that the majority of inspectors approach it this way as well. When I meet a client, the first question that I'm going to have for them is, tell me what your concerns are about the house, because they've seen the house before. I haven't. I'm going to go through my own protocol in terms of how I'm going to conduct myself over the 2, 3, 4 hours that we're together, depending upon, you know, the condition and size of the house. But certainly, if they're not prepared with a list of questions, then there's going to be a lot of things that are kind of swimming around in their head, and maybe they didn't get answers to things that were really important to them to begin with. So I think that's the first thing to start. Second to that is, you know, we can overwhelm people. So one of the things that I always try to talk to our new inspectors about is to make sure that we speak to people in a language that they understand. And I know you just made a reference to, I went a little bit over your head on the radon, and that's not my goal. Our goal is to make sure that people understand what we're talking about with respect to the condition of the home. So we have to break it down in terms that they understand. So speak layman's terms. We don't need to wow them with our technical expertise. That's not helpful if people walk away from this conversation and really don't have a sense of what's going on. And help them understand that this is a normal condition for this house based upon the age of the house. So for example, when we're in a 1940s house, we're going to see 3 vintages of electrical systems in that house, more likely than not. We're going to see some of the remnants of the original wiring in there, which might have been knob and tube wiring, or maybe some BX conductors. We're going to see some 20-year improvements that were made in the house. So could be some early Romex, maybe some aluminum wiring based upon the age of the house. And then we're going to see modern improvements in electrical systems. And it's important that clients understand that that's normal for that particular house. By the same token, when they walk into a house that's 20 years old, chances are that everything in that house is 20 years old. And they need to understand, where are we in the life expectancy of these things? So helping them kind of determine what is normal for that house is really one of the most important things as inspectors that we can do. The other thing is to make sure that everybody that's on the job site understands the same thing. And what I mean by that is we all get distracted. Sometimes, Uncle Charlie shows up and he has his own particular agenda for how the inspection is going to go. I know what I have to do as a professional to do the inspection. The realtor, buyer's agent, seller's agent may be there. They may get called away on phone conversations or whatever. We're all doing business, totally get that. But the most important thing is at the end of the inspection is to get all the relevant party members together and have one conversation about what are the important things in the house. From a licensing perspective, we have...
Wait, was that before or after you compiled the report and distributed the report?
Well, that would be before we do the reporting, right? So basically, we call it a kitchen table summary, where we just get everybody together at the end and say, hey, these are the important things that we're going to report on. We're going to talk about the roof conditions. We're going to talk about some electrical items. We're going to talk about a couple of plumbing things, so that everybody knows that these are the main takeaways for this inspection, and also understands that the report, the other 25 pages of the report, is going to be general information, maybe maintenance suggestions, potential upgrade items. We do have mandates for our licensing that require us to report certain things. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that, anything that is significantly deficient or the end of its useful life, we are mandated reporters on that. It's not an option. In addition to that, anything that requires further evaluation, we're required to let the client know that. So for example, I might have a 40-year-old furnace that's working fine, but I have no idea what the condition of the heat exchanger is because it hasn't been serviced in 3 years. Well, that's going to require some further evaluation by a licensed service technician to come out and do a heat exchanger analysis on that system to make sure that that system is safe to operate, because that's not something that you can tell visually.
I was going to ask you, what constitutes use the better part of its useful life?
Yeah, so it's all equipment dependent, right? So those are things that we as inspectors are expected to know. So I'm expected to know that a particular furnace has a 20 to 30 year life expectancy.
Okay.
40 years old, we have to make that call and say, hey, listen, this hasn't been serviced in 3 or 4 years according to the documentation here. I cannot tell you if this is operating safely from a carbon monoxide protection perspective, for example. So those are the things that we have to know as inspectors. And, a good inspector is going to be able to walk into a 1730 house and have a qualified conversation, and a 2015 house and have the same qualified conversation.
That sounds like a list. That sounds like a little, learning moment for listing agents to make sure that they have that conversation with their sellers,
Sure.
that all their systems have been had recent, what do you call them, checkups?
Service, absolutely.
Services, yeah.
And Susie, particularly this time of year, think about what's going to happen over the next month, right? We're not going to be able to run air conditioners. Pools are going to be shut down. Irrigation systems are going to be shut down. So if you have any listeners that are thinking about listing properties in the next 3 to 4 months, maybe having those systems serviced now before they can't be operated is a valuable proposition.
Excellent. Anne or Brad, if you want to speak up now, do you have any burning questions for Bill or Sue? And Brad, I know you you can put something in the chat if you want to, because you're not you don't have audio, but go ahead and jump in, interrupt me. Otherwise, we'll just keep going. So the question, I did have a question. I was curious about, are inspections different in the winter versus the summer?
Sure. So, and again, everybody's going to deal with this a little bit differently, but think about what happens when it snows. I'm not going to be able to tell you what's on the roof. Maybe not the top of the chimney, perhaps the grading situation around the outside of the house, walkways, driveways, entries.
Decks.
There's going to be limitation decks, patios, the limitations to all those things. And every company's going to deal with that differently. We've made a decision that we're going to offer the client the opportunity for us to come back at no charge to do a snow covered area review. And it will be limited to those areas that were snow covered at the time of the inspection, obviously. And the only thing that we ask is that they give us some time to be able to get back there and do that. So, for example, if we got a foot of snow tomorrow and I was scheduled to come out and do an inspection, at the time of the inspection, we would have a conversation with the client and the agent and say, listen, when the snow or ice is melted, call our office, give us 3 days to come back out there, and we'll get out there. Typically going to do it between jobs, that type of thing. And we will amend the report.
But that may be too late for a buyer's decision to
Yeah,
buy.
unfortunately, it's the best that we can do. You know, although I did inspect the house the other day that had a heated driveway, so that might have helped.
Oh, what? Nice.
They had a heated driveway. Yeah, they had a 600 amp service in the house, and they had electric mats underneath their driveway to
Beautiful.
melt all the snow. So I wouldn't have to go back to that house for the driveway.
Okay. How does an inspection influence an appraisal? Does it?
So maybe. One of the things that's cropped up recently, and I don't know how impacted you are by this, Susie, but the concrete foundation conversation in the primarily northeastern part of the state, more and more mortgage companies and some insurance companies are asking to see documentation of the condition of the foundation. More insurance companies are asking about roofs than in the past. And even some on, mechanicals, heating and air conditioning equipment. So there could be some interplay there. Obviously, when you have some government backing for VA, for example, if you're following the VA standards, the seller is required to pay for the pest inspection. And again, I realize not every home inspection company does a wood boring insect inspection, but those that do, that would be paid for by the seller. So there may be some interplay there. And then,
Is that typically not included in a regular inspection?
It's not covered by the home inspection standards. So basically the home inspection standards are really just for the house and the immediate property around it. So wood boring insect, for example, would not be covered by that, nor would radon or water testing or mold unless it was a mortgage requirement. Some VAs, again, do require lead water testing. And also some FHA loans have certain requirements for like peeling paint, cracked windows, missing railing, that type of stuff. So most
of those are all add-ons, you're saying? All those things you just listed off are add-ons?
No, those would be things where you had asked about the interplay between the appraiser and the inspection company. Oh. Sometimes we get a call from an appraiser and say, hey, I was out at this property. I'm not sure about the roof. This particular lender has a requirement for 2-year life expectancy on a roof. Can you help me out with that? So we do sometimes get those questions from that, but that's pretty limited, to be honest with you. Have you had any concrete foundation conversations?
We did when it was all rolling out. There's been one or two cases in Eastern Connecticut.
Sure.
Not a whole lot. Last year when Dan Coyne was president, he was very involved in the legislative conversations going on in Hartford. We discussed in our purchase and sale agreement whether to have a place to check it off for the concrete pyrotite inspection. Sure. So we have a list of inspections that people can check off that they want to have. Okay. And they actually made a decision not to bring it to anyone's attention.
Okay.
So,
And the reason I asked the question is we are seeing more out of that geographic area where to your point, mortgage companies are requiring that inspection be done. I did one the other day in Canton.
really?
Had any pyrite issues in Canton, but this was a lender requirement. So we did the inspection.
Is that unusual? I mean, was it
It
a
is.
special, different, weird house? I mean, why? Why did they require it?
No, it was just that particular lender's requirement. Anything they do in the state of Connecticut, evidently they're requiring to have a pyrite inspection done.
Isn't that a separate inspection?
It is.
Isn't it
We were
expensive?
certified. Say again?
Isn't it expensive?
Well, we don't work for free.
But I
So-
mean, like way more than a regular home inspection.
No, well, so there's been some changes to that program in the last year and a half that have allowed home inspectors to become certified to do that evaluation.
Mhm.
So there is currently no requirement for core sampling to be done. There was in the past, and that's where a lot of the expense was. So basically, the inspection itself is fundamentally the similar price to a home inspection. So based on square footage, that type of thing. Because again, you're dealing with relatively new houses. You're talking about from 1983 to 2016. So these houses aren't that old. So it's really not that complex of an inspection, provided it's just a visual examination, which it is currently.
I'm forgetting what those conversations were last year, but I feel like it's not really encouraged.
So I guess
That inspection.
where you are, right? I mean, I know that every company has their own standard in terms of, what they want to do. Obviously, we do business in that core area, so there's a lot of interest in having that. And again, if banks are starting to ask questions, I just had an underwriter conversation yesterday that had actually nothing to do with pyrite, but that really wasn't their protocol. They were just inquiring about the foundation cracks and that type of thing. So I think there is a heightened sense of awareness in the lending community, and I would expect that in the future in the insurance community as well. I know some are involved in it now, but not many.
I just feel like there was something about the number, whatever the baseline number, there wasn't actually a baseline number on pyrite. So
No, there is not.
right?
There's
So
no
if you find out you have a little tiny little trickling of it, it might not be enough to get you the money you need to fix it. But now you've got pyrite on your home, and
So, and this is why the captive insurance company that oversees this program opted to go to a visual examination and remove the requirement for core sampling. Because to your point, there is no agreement on the amount of pyrite that's acceptable at this point in time.
okay, so they removed that.
They did, yeah.
Hmm.
Through the captive insurance company. There are other programs out there, but we're only involved in the one through it's the Concrete Foundation Solutions Indemnity Company is the captive insurance company.
And you guys are a listed insurance carrier who does that test, right?
So
Don't
we
you
have
to get on the
four
list?
inspectors that are certified to do that. Yes.
Okay. All right, cool. Does anyone have any other questions? Sue, did you want to weigh in any way? I just want to say thank you to Sue in front of Bill. That Sue is a very active member of ECAR. She's on our affiliate committee. Are you any other committees? But you attend pretty much everything we do. And we very much appreciate your support and participation engagement with ECAR. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I enjoy working with you guys. You're a fabulous board, really very active. I love everything that you guys do, your ideas. I mean, Catherine has been a joy to work with, and I was happy that you got that promotion, so that was great. But yeah, you have a great membership, and like I said, I'm glad that I've been able to be included so quickly because it's only been, I don't know, a little over a year now, or a year and a half that I joined on with ECAR, and I really
By the
enjoy it.
way, speaking of that, do you hear from Kip at all? Is he happy in Florida?
Bill, have you heard from Kip?
I haven't spoken to Kip in a few months. He's quite happy.
Yes.
I'm sure. That's good.
Last I know.
Yeah.
Well, Brad is on the call, and he is a commercial realtor. Is there anything you want to tell us about commercial inspections?
Sure. Commercial inspections, much like any other things, don't necessarily have a standard per se. There are commercial inspection standards that are not largely followed unless you get into very large projects. For the most part, I think most realtors will find themselves in some type of a mixed use type situation. When you are doing commercial stuff, obviously you get into larger conversations. We do a fair amount of commercial inspections. Most home inspection companies you'll find do, and will have some of their own standards kind of blended in, borrowed from the home inspection industry, but there is no separate licensing per se. Very large projects end up in engineering firm conversations, which is a little bit different protocol than most home inspectors would apply as part of their due diligence in there. So yeah, I think everybody that does commercial inspections probably has a very good program that's well defined. I know we do, and certainly the same rules apply in terms of making sure that you're doing your due diligence for your client. If I can, a couple of things I think just we all need to kind of be mindful of is making sure that we document everything well. And I think this is one of the things that as brokers and realtors out there, making sure that these conversations that occur on site are well documented and followed through on. Very frequently, we do require or request, I should say, to see the seller's disclosure, to see if there's any information in there that is helpful to us in terms of going through the inspection process. And also it's important to make sure that we speak to what we know. We don't really want to go beyond our area of expertise in any way, shape, or form, because I don't think that really helps anybody. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, just making sure that we're pointing out any potential trouble spots to potential buyers so that they have a heads up as to maybe I should consider this type of examination versus that one, or this type of test versus another type of thing. So I think that's
what are the handful of inspection issues that are the reddest flags that a buyer should be weighing in seriously, like that are like everything can be fixed, but
Yep.
some things you just don't know what the costs are, like septic could be an
Sure.
an unending issue. Is there
Sure.
anything else that are like real big red flags for buyers?
Bill, before you answer that, I do
Sure.
want, I think it's important too that realtors understand that there is a big difference between a commercial inspection and a residential inspection. And we do have agents that, do both. So, that's something that is important for them to be aware of, that there are differences in those inspections.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Sue. So Susie, to your question, it's always water.
Oh,
So whether it's roofs that leak, whether it's flashings that leak, whether it's plumbing, whether it's site drainage conditions, those are always the things that put us on high alert because those are things that can be somewhat unpredictable. Think about this summer where we're out inspecting houses and it hasn't rained in 40 days. It's going to be a problem, to figure out what's going on there. We've had a significant drought
good
this
for
year.
a seller though. That's a good time to sell when there's no
Oh,
rain.
absolutely, yeah. So think about water supply, right? We've been in a pretty significant drought. Well, what does that mean for somebody that's on a well? And so, yeah, water is like always, it's all encompassing.
The root of all evil.
You go through a drought and then next spring the phone rings because somebody has a flooded basement that you could never predict it. You go into a house that, looks fine. Maybe it's got a nice finished basement. You can't see a whole lot. And then you get one of these winters where we just got a pile of snow and a lot of spring rain and nobody cleaned out the gutters and maybe they had some reverse grading situations. But yeah, anything related to water, I think that, if you're out there as a realtor and working with a buyer or working with a seller, I think those are things to key in on. Where could something leak? And that would be my primary concern.
And that was my next question is, what is your advice to sellers who are getting ready to put their market on and will be expecting home inspections as the process goes on with the purchase?
Yeah, so, I would say this. and let me just say one thing before I get into the seller part of it. New construction inspections. We don't see a lot of new construction inspections, but I will tell you that they're worth their weight in gold. There are so many things in new construction that really don't get discussed. And it's not a function of whether somebody's doing something right or wrong. It's just things that just don't get talked about. And so when you go out and you have this conversation in new construction, it's really an enlightening experience for a buyer and even sometimes for the builder, because they just think differently than we do. Inspectors look at things in a certain way. And, we're really all about education. That's really what we're there for, is to help people understand what's going on in that house. And, a builder may not have a program where they're really helping a new client understand what they're, buying in the building, what they can expect to happen over the first 2 to 5 years in the building, for example. And so to your point about those that are planning to put houses on the market, I would go back to the conversation we had earlier. Think about the seasonal systems in the building that we won't be able to evaluate over the next 4 to 6 months. I would look at that. And then the other thing to consider is maybe in certain situations, a seller preparation inspection makes sense for someone that doesn't know the house well, for example. Maybe there's a life event change that's occurred and somebody wants to prepare their house for sale. I actually just got a phone call for a 1870 mansion in Hartford that's been vacant for 3 or 4 years that they want to go out and do a pre-sale inspection on to figure out what's going on in this house so that they can kind of prepare for that conversation. As you know, there are liabilities and then there are liabilities, and some of them are legal and some of them are otherwise. And I think information is power. And the more that people know about a house that they're going to put on the market, whether they've been living there for 4 years or 40 years, there's things that they're going to learn by having an inspection done that can be to their advantage. The worst thing that happens for a seller is they put their house on the market, and we all know that they're not going to sell like hotcakes forever. We've been very fortunate this year where we've had a really productive market going on, but that changes. The cycle goes up and down. And when that cycle changes, that's the time to think about, okay, we should look at this differently, and let's make sure that we prepare this house, because maybe the seller isn't prepared to take on a $5,000 or a $7,000 impact after they have a home inspection and realize that, oh my God, my roof is at the end of its life, or whatever the case may be. So there's information is power, as they say.
Would you say seller pre-purchase inspections are on the rise, or not necessarily?
So it kind of ebbs and flows. It depends upon what's happening in the market. It's never been a big part of the market, but certainly there are years when we see more of them than others. We haven't seen a lot this year because of everything happening in the market. Basically, people are putting houses on their market and they're selling very quickly in many cases. So we haven't seen a lot of interest in that. But then, there's years when you're coming out of 2008 and people have been in their houses for a while. And maybe they're not as well positioned financially as they would be otherwise in a normal market. That's the time to look at things and find out, okay, what's going to come back to kind of bite you when you list this house on the market? Because once you know it, you can't unknow it, right?
Does a seller inspection, do you think that it inspires buyers to not bother getting an inspection if the seller has one readily available?
So we haven't really seen any evidence of that. Again, we're talking about a pretty small percentage of the market, maybe 5%, 7% of the market. It's just not a big number to begin with.
Okay.
And on occasion, we'll get a phone call from someone that we've, a potential buyer that we've done an inspection for the seller, and they had just some clarifying questions, but no indication that they weren't going to do their own inspection anyhow. And I would encourage that, because think about what happens, Susie. I go out today and do a pre-sale inspection, and then a realtor's working with the seller, and they're preparing the house and they're making decisions about what they're going to repair and what they're not going to repair, maybe what they're going to disclose. And it could be 4 to 6 months before that house is actually ready to be on the market. Things can change over that period of time. So we would absolutely encourage people to have a pre-sale inspection on the buyer side. I think that's important.
Do you ever run across unethical behavior with regard to concealment, misrepresentation of pertinent facts? Like, how often do you find out that there's an issue that a buyer walked away from, and then another buyer comes in, and you're aware of the fact that nothing's being said about what was found out when the first buyer walked away?
So, I mean, does it happen? Yes, but you're usually talking about, in most situations, potentially years in between, right? So maybe I inspected a house 5 years ago and I end up inspecting it again just by happenstance. Well, conditions are going to change. So I wouldn't necessarily rely upon that 5-year-old information, which is, I guess, a different conversation than if I was there last week. There was a condition that, now is concealed. I think I have a duty to my client to say, listen, this is what I experienced. I don't know what may have intervened in the last 7 days since I've been here, but this is what I experienced, and I can't unknow that. So I think you have to be ethical, to your point.
Okay, that's very interesting, because realtors have a requirement to be ethical and disclose that. Do inspection companies have that same?
So we have a code of ethics, which is somewhat different than yours, because again, we're not necessarily dealing with inside information, if you will. It's a pretty rare event that circumstance that we just described occurs. So I think it really just comes down to your individual morals and ethics more than anything else. But as an organization, we've always made an effort to make sure that clients know what's going on when we thought it was relevant. And again, time is the big factor there. So I've been doing this with this company for almost 23 years now, and it just doesn't come up that often because, even though we're a small state, there's a lot of home inspectors in the state of Connecticut. So we don't have, a command of the market as far as that goes.
I don't know that I have any other questions. Does anybody have any other questions for Bill or Sue? I mean, I could bring up the topic of diversity with you. It's the hottest thing going on at the NAR conference right now, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that something that affects your business as well? Is that anything you guys have on your radar or have any intentions to discuss, change, think about?
So, from the business side of it, of doing the home inspections, I don't think it really affects us that much. When we talk about, diversity and inclusion in our company, we're really thinking about the makeup of our staff. So we're always, looking to diversify, and actually we're a pretty diversified company in that, our office staff and our inspection staff has probably a 30-70 mix of male female. With regard to diversity in culture, I mean, it's like anything else. We wrestle with that all the time. We've had young people, we've had people of color, we've had older people in our business. We're inclusive. We're a family business as far as that goes. So we always think about those things. But I don't think we hire on a scale that really allows us to affect a great deal of change as far as that goes. We're 37 people in our company. We're just not a huge company as far as that goes. So
you probably have the same kind of stats on male-female inspections or inspectors, right? I mean, there's probably not that many females that go out and do home inspections, or
there aren't. And to be honest with you, we've had a couple in the past. And on occasion, I get a resume that comes across my desk. And when I follow up on those conversations with people, oftentimes, once they understand what's involved in the actual process of inspecting, I think that there's probably a different feeling in that regard. I think a lot of people that have been in similar businesses were probably on the appraiser end of it. Perhaps on the engineering or commercial inspection end of it. It's kind of a different process when you're, as Sue had mentioned earlier, about the inspections itself. There's not a lot of crawl spaces, and there's a relatively mild ick factor in the commercial side of it compared to the home inspection side of it. So we welcome anybody, and we get our share of applications, but we're just not in a position to hire a ton of people at any point in time. Like I said, we typically hire somewhere between 2 and 5 people a year. That's pretty much where we're at in terms of the size of our company.
All right. Well, that was kind of enlightening for me too. I hope you guys got something out of this. I definitely did. And
Good.
really nice to see you, Bill. Thank you,
It's a
Sue and Bill,
pleasure.
for coming on and sharing your insights on inspections. And I guess we'll call it a day. And this recording will be available for our membership. Hope you guys stay safe out there. Continue to wear your masks, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thanks, Susie.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate your time.
Susie.